my paranormal experience occurred in 2020, at the latter part of 2020. And it happened here at my home. We had been living with my parents for about 6 months because my mom had been having health issues. We live in Texas. I'm a native Texan. They live in a very small rural country town. It's about 2 hours from where we live. I live in Fort Worth. And to get there, you go, through these back roads in the country. And, it's real scenic. We would commute back and forth every day to work because we worked in Fort Worth, but we had to take care of my mom. So we would go back and forth every morning, leaving at 4 a.m. and getting here by 7 so that my husband can go to work. And then I was taking some courses at a nearby college. So, this was every day. And then at 5 o'clock, we turn around and go back and do the same thing again. It was very hard. And I guess, like I said, after about 6 months, she was better. And so we moved back to Fort Worth. And rather than hurry and rush into getting a house, we decided to find a small apartment, quickly, something we could move in right away and then take our time looking for a place to live, a home. So we're here. We have these apartments that we're living in. To describe the layout, in order to get to my front door, you go down a short breezeway. If you go straight ahead, you go into the door. If you're facing the door and go to the right, there are about 4 or 5 stairs, small steps that you go down, and you enter into a big courtyard with a patio with, a walkway. About 35 yards in front of you is another apartment building, the side of another one of the buildings. In the middle there is just this big grassy patch with trees and flowers and such. I'm going into that because when we were living in this small town with my parents, they lived in the city, but they had these huge lots. Because you're in town, everybody has big lots and they grow things, and it's just an ideal sort of country rural situation. So my point is, my parents had this enormous backyard that was fenced in. I have a little dog, a Chihuahua named Rocky, and he had the habit of waking me up every night or every early morning at 2 a.m. to go outside and do his little business. So I would be the one, he'd wake me up, not my husband. He'd wake me up and I'd go and just open the door and let him run around. And I'd just stand there in the doorway or go out and sit on the porch steps, for a little while and wait for him to do whatever. And then he'd come back in. I'd let him in and we'd go back to bed. Well, here we moved to Fort Worth. He's still on that schedule. So this particular evening, I'm asleep. He wakes me up, 2 a.m. I walked out, opened the door. I had him on a leash because he likes to run and play. So I had him on a leash. We go down the stairs. And I guess before I even hit the bottom step, I get this heaviness that comes over me. Thinking back, it was like a malevolence. It was just this evil feeling. I've never, ever experienced anything like that before in my life. You hear people say that, all of a sudden they felt the hair, stand up on the back of their neck or something. This was nothing like that. This was much more profound. It was a clear night. You could see the stars. We have, there are lights and things. It's very well lit out here. So it wasn't dark, and, there wasn't anywhere really where someone could hide and actually, come out and get me. And that was the first thing I did. I just started looking around my surroundings to make sure there was no one hiding someplace ready to jump out at me. But I didn't see anybody. So I take a couple of steps and I'm there on the patio and I'm still looking around. The only thing I didn't do was just look straight ahead. And like I said, about 30 feet or so in front of me is the grassy area with the trees and flowers. But then there's this building, the side of a building. They have box hedges that are planted all along the bottom of this building. I look over there and the first thing I see are these beautiful golden eyes, like how the lights at night, you'll shine on an animal and you see these lights in their eyes reflecting. Well, there was no light reflecting off of these beautiful golden eyes. That's the first thing I saw. And then as I looked closer, it was this enormous cat. I mean, friends have Mancoon cats and, they can get to be really, really big. Well, this thing was about the size of a Doberman pinscher. And I'm not kidding. I was thinking about that, and I compared it to a large hog, but no, this was about as big as a Doberman, and I'm not kidding. And it was, at first it was crouched down. And then as I looked at it more, it set up on its hind legs, and I look, and then I can see it very clearly. And I can see its face, and I can see the cat itself. He's like a tabby. He's not a black cat. He's a tabby. And I'm looking at this cat, and I'm just frozen in place, just looking at this thing. And I realized that all this evil feeling, this malevolence, this awful heavy feeling is actually coming from this animal. You have to excuse me a minute, because this brings back that terror. I was so terrified. So as I'm looking at this big cat with gold eyes, his face becomes clearer to me. So I can really see it. It comes into focus, and it's very well lit, and his eyes are glowing now. And the cat face morphs into a human face. And I was really freaked out. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I just sat there and watched this thing in front of me, not believing what I was seeing. And I was frozen in place. I couldn't move. I couldn't even hardly breathe. I just stood there and I watched this thing. I don't know how long. It seemed like forever. But once I could see the face, this cat smiled at me. It smiled this big, toothy grin, sort of like a Cheshire cat. You know, you've seen that Alice in Wonderland cat, but this was evil. And the teeth were fangs, big, sharp, pointy fangs. And then I couldn't move. Then I truly couldn't move. I was frozen in place. I couldn't breathe. I was just transfixed on this cat. It's like I was paralyzed. And the only thing I could think of was, okay, this is evil. This is demonic, is what I thought. This is demonic. I reverted back to my Catholic, upbringing. And the first thing I thought about was, I've got to pray. This is evil. I got to pray, and it's going to go away. I'm thinking that. And then I start to sort of whisper the Lord's Prayer. And I was able to take a breath after I started that. And I was able to move. I don't know what I did. I guess I dragged my dog. I don't even remember what happened to my dog. I guess, he eventually ended up in the house. I don't know. I was, so scared. I must have brought him in somehow. I don't know. All I know is that I turned and I ran as fast as I could back to the house, back to my apartment, ran in and slammed the door through the lock. And I ran into the bathroom. I was hysterically crying, and I became physically ill. I just threw up, and I'm hysterical, and I'm crying, and I must have been a mess, because my husband burst into the bathroom, terrified, scared to death. And he finds me on the floor, crying hysterically, like called up in this fetal position, and he doesn't know what to think. He's never seen me like this ever. And he's trying to calm me down. And finally, I'm calmed down enough to where, I can tell him that there was something outside. Well, before I even, finish telling him what I saw, he's ready to get up and go out there and, and check it out and see what it is. And I'm begging. I said, no, you can't do that. Don't go. Please don't go. And I'm pulling him, and he just can't understand what's wrong. What's going on? What is the deal here? I stood up and I splashed some water in my face, and I told him, I said, you aren't going to believe this. I said, but I took Rocky out, and I felt something evil, some kind of heavy, evil malevolence, that was around me. It just surrounded me. I know what the heck it was. And I looked around thinking, maybe someone's hiding in the bushes. Someone's going to come out and get me. I don't know what I said. And then right in front of me in those stupid bushes is this huge cat. I said, and he's a tabby cat, and he's got these big, beautiful golden eyes. They're kind of illuminated from the lights and everything around. But as I continued to stare, they started glowing. I said, and then he sat up on his haunches, his hind legs, and this thing was huge. Larry, it was bigger than a Mancoon. I swear I thought it was as big as a Doberman. I kid you not. It wasn't as big as those wild hogs that we see sometimes in the countryside when we were driving around in the country. This was a big cat. And as I was staring at this thing, this is where all the evil was coming from. It was just radiating off of this animal. Excuse me. This is real emotional still for me because it just brings it all back. I was terrified. So anyway, I tell him I see this thing and I'm staring and I can't move and I can't breathe. And before my eyes, this stupid thing, his face morphs into a human face and it smiles at me. It actually smiles at me and it's got these huge teeth and I freak. I totally freak. I can't move. I can't breathe. I just think this is demonic. This is the devil. I don't know what the heck that is, but it is not good. And I couldn't move. I was just paralyzed. And the only thing I could think of was to pray. And I started reciting the Lord's Prayer very quietly. I said, and then I guess it released me somehow, or then I was able to move and I hightailed it in here. And that's what happened. He believes me because first of all, he's never seen me like this. He's never seen me, in this state. So he said, well, I don't want you to go out there again. Let's just peek through the blinds, through the patio blinds, because, we have a straight view to that little area where the cat was. I run around, turn off all the lights, and then we peek through the blinds, and it's gone, of course. It's not there. I'm up the rest of the night trying to calm down and trying to keep deep breaths and try and rationalize in my mind what the heck I saw and what was this thing that I saw. Where did it come from? How could this be? I listen to your channel. I listen to all your other paranormal dogman stories and things of Bigfoot, but no one ever talks about a cat. I just couldn't believe I saw this thing. Needless to say, I was terrified of going back out there. And all I could think about was reverting back to my Hispanic heritage. I'm a native Texan and I'm Hispanic. Grew up in the 60s and I had the privilege of growing up with 4 generations all around me, raising me. The matriarch was my great grandmother. She lived to be 102. She was just this really cool woman. She had 15 children that she raised by herself. They were poor, obviously, and she was a healer. Everyone knew that she could take care of any problem you had. She had a huge greenhouse where she grew all kinds of herbs and things. Anything you needed, you could come to her, and you had stomach ache. She'd give you a little tea or something to mix, or child had fever. You'd go there and she'd wrap them up with onions and stuff. It was just crazy stuff that you would think of. Oh my God, I can't believe it. But these were old remedies that people had learned. I think a lot of it came directly from the American Indians. It's very similar. So anyway, I digress. But I reverted back to my childhood because not only was she a healer, but it was just talked about all the time about these paranormal things like ghosts. They saw ghosts and there was nothing to be afraid of. Oh, there's a ghost and it's haunting my grandmother's so-and-so's house. Well, it's because there's a reason. There was always a reason behind everything. So I'm thinking about that and trying to reason in my mind what that was all about. I still couldn't explain it. So the next day I contact a cousin. We have a huge, huge family. She's probably a 3rd or 4th cousin removed, but we're all cousins. So I call my cousin. She's older. She's really one of my mother's 1st or 2nd cousin, but she's a cousin. And I tell her what happened. And of course she believes me. I know she's going to believe me. We all grew up with the same beliefs and the same culture and superstitions and all this. So she tells me that, oh, well, that's nothing to be afraid of. Grandma would always say that, the way to take care of things like that is just to go out there and bless the area or pray about it. Ask for the Lord to come and protect you and take all this stuff away and just protect your apartment. Just whatever comes to mind to say, just talk directly with them. There's no special prayer. Just go out there and do that. If you feel like taking a Bible or whatever, go ahead. You don't need to have holy water like you see, with these priests and exercise the spirits. That's not necessary. Just go out there with good intentions and just talk about it. Speak from your heart. So that was enough to convince me. And, that's one of the things I needed to do. And so I got my little tiny handheld Bible and I went out there one day, in broad daylight. And I had my little prayer book and I'm just walking around the area and just praying and saying, Lord, please don't let this happen again. I don't want to see this cat. Protect us, protect this area, protect this complex. Just please don't let this happen again. Just protect us. So I come in and I would not go outside at night at all. period. Still, to this day, I won't go out there by myself. If the dog wakes me up and has to go, I wake my husband up and I tell him, I say, will you please watch me while I go do this? And he knows. I've kind of gotten him out of the habit, my dog, of having to go out at that hour, but sometimes it's late. And so I wake him up, my husband, drag him to the window or to the patio door, and he'll watch me take him out and I'll run back in. So that's what's happening now. Well, after that day, when I went out and prayed around the porch and around the, patio and grassy area and stuff, about 2 or 3 days later, a neighbor approached me. She was an older Hispanic lady, and she was very friendly, and she started speaking to me in Spanish, and she saw me and realized we were new and, wanted to introduce herself and this kind of thing. And we just started talking. She says, I saw you out here the other day. You have a Bible. And I saw you praying, walking around and praying over this courtyard and all around. What was that about? And so I looked at her and I said, this is the truth. You think I'm crazy? I said, I'm a stranger. You're going to think, oh my God, I have this crazy neighbor now. I said, but quite honestly, I came out one night at 2 a.m. with my dog, and this cat was there. This evil, terrible cat. I said, it was demonic. I know it was. I said, it was huge. It was big as a big dog. It sat up. It had these glowing golden eyes. I said, and it smiled at me. I mean, I keep going over this over and over in my mind because I see it, like it happened yesterday. And I tell her, it sits up and it's got these golden eyes, and his face morphs into a human. And then he smiled and he's got these big, huge fang teeth. And I turn around and run the house. I said, and so I knew it was evil. And so I just went around and kind of tried and blessed and prayed around the area that we would be protected and that evilness wouldn't come back and wouldn't return. And she sits there and she's quiet for a moment. And I'm thinking, oh my God, she's going to turn and run now. But she doesn't. She sits down on the steps with me and she says, well, I have a little granddaughter. She's 5 years old. She lives with me. And her bedroom is right there. She points over where they live. She goes, that's her bedroom window, which faces this courtyard area. She said, that's her bedroom window. She talks to me, and she's come to me several times and told me that she has a cat friend that comes and talks to her through the window, through the screen, sometimes at nighttime. And I think, oh, really, honey? Yeah. She says, it's a cat. She says, it's a yellow kitty. And she says, so I wonder if that's what she saw. And of course I get chills. It just scares me. And I said, well, that might be what she saw. I can't explain it except think it's a very coincidental that she says it's a big cat. It's a yellow cat that comes and talks to her. That sort of sealed it for me, to tell me, well, someone else has seen this thing, even if it is a 4-year-old. That was the experience. It never happened again after that. I've since become good friends with my neighbor, and, I guess her daughter's never seen the cat since. And, that's a good thing. Nothing like this has ever happened to me in my life, ever. No paranormal experiences, nothing weird. Although growing up when I was a child, it was nothing. They talked about stuff like this all the time around the dinner table. We'd have all the family around for dinner on Saturdays or something, and we'd all be talking, my great grandmother, my grandparents, all these generations. We were all sitting around the table talking, and it was just like, oh yeah, so-and-so passed away, and they saw my great grandfather passed away. My great grandmother started seeing him walking around the house. And there was no big deal. It was nothing. She said, well, we just all need to get together to the house and pray, and it'll be okay. I mean, so everything was always explained away. It was all rational. It was no big deal. I heard all these stories and I grew up hearing all this stuff. Nothing ever affected me directly. I believed it. I believed all that stuff because my elders told me, and that's the way it was in our culture and relatives. We all believed it. It was spoken about all the time. It was just nothing. It was just part of living. Oh, this happened. But it was always, well, we just need to pray about it. And that's okay. There's nothing to be afraid of. I remember distinctly my grandmother telling me, oh, honey, there's nothing to be afraid of. Dead people can't hurt you. It's people that are alive you got to worry about, which makes perfect sense. But like I said, I never experienced anything like that before. So now we jump ahead, I guess about maybe 4 months later. I'm a night owl. I stay up really late sometimes watching TV or doing whatever, schoolwork or something. And it was late. It was maybe 1 o'clock in the morning or something. It was a beautiful, beautiful full moon night. Everything was lit up. It was just gorgeous. The apartments I live in, they're 2 stories. They have these really pitched, slanted roofs, like we're talking real slanted roofs. Some of them have fireplaces, up on the 2nd floor. Well, I go to the patio and I look outside because it's just such a beautiful night. And again, directly in front of me, this building on the 2nd floor, there's the chimney stack, and leaning against the chimney is this very tall black silhouette of a man. I got the feeling it was a man. And he was just leaning against it, looking around, just standing there holding on, leaning against this chimney. And he was really tall and very slender. And I couldn't believe it. I was thinking, what the heck? I ran and got my husband immediately because I thought, he's got to see this. He's got to see this. He came and he saw it. We're just standing there thinking, how did he get up there? And look how tall he is. And we're whispering all this stuff. We're inside peeking out the blinds. Well, this person turns around and just jumps to another rooftop, like no big deal, just leaps over there. And he's standing there and then jumps off the roof and on the other side, and we can't see him anymore. We talk about that too. And, who the heck would be up there at that hour? How could he do that? My husband's just trying to rationalize all this stuff. And I am too. I mean, dadgum. Can you imagine? This guy was so tall. He was probably 6 feet and very, very slender, very, very thin. You think about, well, maybe shadow people. I don't know. I don't know what it was. It didn't scare me, but it totally freaked me out. What is it about these apartments? We see these weird things. Stupid me. I go into the office and I tell the people in the office, the assistant manager, I said, you know what? There was this man up on the roof over there. He was standing at 1 o'clock in the morning, jumping. He jumped to the extra roof. I said, I don't know what the heck was going on. I don't know how he got up there. I said, but it was middle of the night. Of course, they take it seriously. How could he have gotten up there? I don't know, So they go, and I notice they get these ladders and they set them up and they look around. Of course, they don't see anything. And I know they think I'm crazy, and I laugh about it now because I have no qualms about just being honest and telling people, hey, what'd you see? Well, this is what I saw. I think about it later that, oh my gosh, they probably think I'm weird and I'm crazy or out of my mind. But as old as I am, I really don't care what they think. I have one other experience that's really kind of funny. When I think about it, I had forgotten it, but in getting ready for this segment, I remembered it. I've worked as a first responder since 2020. I've gone all over the country testing and administering vaccines. At this one point in time, Michigan had the highest mortality rate in the nation. So we took a group of people, there was about 50 of us, and we went to Michigan. We all stayed in this one hotel, and it's not in Detroit proper, but just outside of Detroit. It's a very famous, very well-known hotel. Everything in Detroit and everything is Henry Ford something or other. Everything is Ford. Well, this was named after a Ford. It's a beautiful old hotel, a gorgeous new hotel, but they've given it this name. We're all at dinner. We're all sitting there. There's about 50 of us, and we're all talking, and we're all having dinner, one night. I overhear a conversation that these girls are having down the table, and they're saying something about hearing these kids running up and down the hallway at night. Did you hear those kids? Did you hear it? And I just heard portions of that conversation. And I said, I didn't hear the kids. I said, but let me tell you what I did hear. Someone on the other side of my wall was having sex, and the headboard kept banging against my wall. I said, and it went on like most of the night. I finally got up and banged on the door on the wall myself and went and laid back down. I guess I fell back asleep. And they all looked at each other and started laughing. And they said, Debbie, where's your room? And I said, well, it's, 158. They said, that means your room is at the very end of the hall, right? I said, yeah. Is there another room on the other side of your room? No, that's the stairwell. And then they look at me and I'm like, oh my God, what are you trying to say? And then they start laughing and they say, well, this hotel's haunted. Didn't you know that? I said, no, I didn't know that. This floor they put us all on is the floor where most of the paranormal activity takes place. There's one particular room, I forget what the room number is, but they never have people stay in that room. They never open it up to people and stuff. And so I guess it's not uncommon to hear children, laughing and running up the halls, running up and down the halls, or people knocking on your door, in the middle of the night, and you go and there's no one there. I had amorous spirits making love on the other side of my wall all night. I have to laugh about it because I just freaked. I had to laugh and think, oh my God, only me. Only you, Debbie, would have that kind of an experience, with a ghost or with some kind of spirit. So anyway, that was, those have been my experiences, with the paranormal. As I was saying earlier, to this day, I don't go outside at night to take my dog. I never go out that way. There's a hallway to the left, the opposite direction from where that little courtyard is that leads to the parking lot. That's where our cars are. Everything's real well lit, bright. I never have a problem coming in and out, going to the store or whatever, parking, in the garage. I don't see anything. I've never even considered anything showing up or appearing there or anything. I feel perfectly safe and confident coming in and out at night, but I will still not go out over there on the other side. It's just stuck with me. And even now talking to you about it, I still get emotional because, it just really stuck with me, that terror and that feeling and the thought that something like that could actually happen to me. I'm nothing special, not that you have to be. Couldn't believe it. All I can say is just, wow. There truly are things out there that are unexplained. Like I said, growing up and hearing all these stories and secondhand accounts, my grandparents and my aunts and uncles and everybody saw this and they experienced that. Well, it never happened to me. I believed it, obviously. They have these stories to tell. I believe it, these experiences. But I think, gosh, this has never happened to me. And that's been so long ago. I was just a kid. Most of the people who had those experiences have since passed away. And some of them are still around, but I don't see them very often. We've since moved from that area of Texas. Central Texas is where I grew up. But we since moved from there. And where we are here in Fort Worth, there actually aren't any of my family. My husband's family is up here, but mine isn't. So no one talks about it. No one's ever said anything. We don't share those things unless we get around family members. And then we talk about these crazy things that have happened. And remember when this story happened and remember that. And my husband just sits there and he's in awe. It's just so hard for him to believe. But my dad, he's my stepfather. He's been a part of my life since he married my mother in 1966. I was 6 years old. He hears it and he believes it. Other aunts, my other uncles have married, and their wives or spouses or whatever have heard these stories. They believe it, they hear it, and some of them have actually experienced things. Something else that happened once, my mother's great grandmother lived in this big, big house. The house has since gone, but she lived in this big, huge white house that was 3 stories, and it had all these big pillars and the big grounds, and they had cattle and livestock there, but this house was huge. And I guess she had like 10 kids. They all lived there in the house, and it was haunted, and they would see spirits and they would hear people, and they'd see people walking in the hallways, and they'd hear, noises and knocks. And particularly one room, there was the sound of a rocking chair that was always heard, one of the attic rooms. And of course you go up there, there was nothing. There weren't any rocking chairs or furniture and stuff. So our grandmother just blew it off and said, well, it's, that's nothing to be afraid of. It's just, what it is there's some stolen property that's here. It's buried or someplace hidden on the grounds or in the house. And it's just someone, wanting that returned until those belongings or valuables or whatever are returned to this family or this person. Then those spirits can't rest. They're looking for their stolen belongings or whatever. So you hear that and it's no big deal. My mom said so. That's how she explained it away. So we weren't afraid. We'd see these things and it didn't terrify us. We were just, oh, okay. So it's nothing to be afraid of. They're not here to hurt us. Years later, my mother's like 20. She was a child when it happened. So later on, I guess she's like 20 years old. And she says, they came and tore down the house. They bulldozed all that area to build a new freeway. When they were cleaning the site and everything and bulldozing everything away, they found these old suitcases. And they went and they looked at the suitcases and they opened them up. And I'll be darned if there weren't jars of silver dollars and jewelry in these suitcases. She said it was the craziest thing. There were nice cases on the inside. There was, a name and address, of the person that owned the suitcase. They contacted the family, and of course the family's long since gone, dead and buried, but like some grandson or something, is still around. They contact this grandson and tell him that they found these suitcases, and he just can't believe it. He said, all that stuff was stolen by one of my uncles, and they always said he stole this stuff, but they could never prove it. So they returned the stuff to him on, all these valuables. So like I said, there was always some sort of truth that was attached to those things. And it's like the old people in my family, they just knew what it was and explained it away, and it was nothing to be terrified of. They just thought, oh, okay, well, that's a problem. And you just went on about your business. But believe me, if I saw spirits in my house, or wherever, I would have moved. I would have left that place so fast. I wouldn't have stayed, I wouldn't have stuck around. But growing up with those stories, it was nothing. It was just part of dinner conversation, but something like this actually happened to me. I can't forget it. It's just stuck with me. I've talked to my mother or told my mother about it. And she just, well, did you pray? Did you pray about it? Did you do this? Did you do that? Yeah, I did it all. And I haven't seen him since. I guess I should feel better. I should feel okay because it's been so long. But I actually have a therapist that I see occasionally, and I went and I talked to him about it. And he said, well, it's similar to post-traumatic stress, except not as severe. He goes, you'll still feel it and you'll still think about it. Sometimes it'll hit you stronger than others. You'll really be terrified, or those feelings will come back really strong, but then eventually it'll lessen, and in time you'll get better, or you won't even think about it. You'll forget it. I'm still kind of hoping for that time to come, because like I said, I still won't go out there at night, but at least I feel safe here and protected. And I know that nothing's going to get into my apartment. Those have been my paranormal experiences and the crazy stories and experiences I had growing up with my crazy family that I love dearly.
My paranormal experiences took place in Wanaque, New Jersey. I originally am from the little state of Rhode Island. I was born and raised here. I had moved to New Jersey in 2004. I was dating an artist who was from New Jersey. I moved down there with her. It was the first time I had moved out of state. I had gotten a job at a pet store and met a coworker. I'll call him Jay. Jay and I hit it off pretty quick. We had a lot in common, including paranormal stuff, cryptozoology, conspiracy theories, stuff of that nature. He had asked me if I'd ever seen the magazine called Weird New Jersey, and I had not. And he actually brought in a copy that he had, let me borrow it. And it was pretty interesting, full of a lot of weird sights and sounds and everything of New Jersey, a lot of weird things in there, hence the title of the magazine. But one story really caught my eye in regards to a place that was referred to as the Wanaque vortex. Supposedly, a man had stumbled upon this place and had taken some, from what he claimed, some pretty astonishing photographs of all types of paranormal, you name it. Anything from demons to really large glowing orbs, bright white lights, things of that nature. Some of the claims were a little bit too astonishing for me to full-heartedly believe just from taking the man's word, but something about it just intrigued me to the point where I did some research more into it and ended up finding the place and locating it. I had maybe lived about 45 minutes from it, so it actually wasn't that hard to locate. It's actually right underneath the Route 287 overpass that goes through Ringwood and Wanaque, New Jersey. It goes over a small river, and it's a pretty decent sized valley. When you're going over the bridge, it heads towards the Tappan Zee, heading towards New York. You can see the skyline in the distance. It's a pretty nice bridge. Underneath that is where this activity takes place, apparently. So I went there during the day to kind of get my bearings, because it's kind of a weird path that you take, and all of a sudden you kind of come around a bend after walking for about half or a mile, 3/4 of a mile, and there's this big looming bridge over you, spanning over this river that at the time when I was there was actually dry. So I got to walk around in this valley that stretches up through and goes up into New York State eventually. And it was a weird vibe there. I'll say that. Even during the daytime, there was just something strange in the air. I don't know. I'm not psychic or anything like that, but my intuition, my spidey sense is definitely kicking in, and I definitely could feel something there, almost like electric, I guess, to put it in better words. I don't really say this to many people, but I verbally out loud in the middle of this valley, and there's nobody else around. It's just like in the woods. I just kind of said out loud, well, I'm here. Nothing happened. So I just, walked around for a little bit. There's some trails and stuff. There's some remnants of the old powder mill factory there that exploded in the early 1900s. So that was cool to kind of go and check out. It was actually at the time, I guess, one of the largest explosions like ever. The shockwaves, I guess, were felt in New York and some parts of Connecticut. Some people died, and it was, there's still remnants of it there. So you can go and kind of just walk around and check it out. The next day I went to work and I told Jay that I had found the place. He was actually super excited. He couldn't believe that I had actually went out and found it, because to him, it was kind of like a folklorish type place. This man had just kind of taken some pictures of that looked extraordinary, and if taken at face value were, pretty astonishing. So he agreed that we would go there that night and we would bring our cameras and have a little paranormal adventure into the woods in upstate New Jersey underneath the Route 287 bridge in Wanaque. We got all excited, we packed up our coffees, and at the time it was April of 2005. Luckily, I was dating an artist, and she had some cameras. I didn't even own a camera back then. Cell phones didn't have cameras back then. So she had a nice digital camera. It ran on AA batteries, which became a problem later on. Batteries at this place just seem to not work so long. Even if they're brand new, they'll only last for about 30 minutes, 45 minutes. So that became an issue. But as soon as we walked in, it was really cool. In the valley, there was a little bit of fog. It was kind of creepy. There were some animals making noises here and there. And the first picture that I took, I was astonished. The flash on the camera, and this is kind of important. I don't even remember what type of camera it was. Like I said, it wasn't mine. It was my girlfriend at the time. It was hers. But when you press down on the button to take a photo, the small orange light would go off, and then about a second later, the flash would go off and take a photograph. So there was a good 1 second delay in between pressing on the button to take the picture and the actual flash going off to capture the photo. And in that span of time, with the orange light going off and then the flash going off, to my amazement, I saw a large green circular object in one of the trees, just kind of floating there. And as the flash bounced off it, it illuminated it to the point where I shouted, "Oh my God." And immediately went on the viewfinder on the camera. And sure enough, there was and I mean, this was not your typical orb. I hate using that term because I believe that term kind of got muddied up. There's a lot of photos of dust and bugs and pollen and rain or just moisture in the air that a lot of people misconstrue, in my opinion, as paranormal activity. I've taken pictures of dust, even at the vortex, the Wanaque vortex, just walking around, and it's like, oh, we got to delete that photo because we kicked up too much dust on one of the trails. And, we'd have to kind of stand there and let it settle down to get any clear photographs. This was something totally different that I'd never seen in a photograph, except for the ones that were claimed by that man that found this place a few years prior. This orb was not perfectly circular. It was almost shaped like a bloated football. in the span of time that the flash had illuminated it, it had moved. And in the photograph, you can actually see it almost like superimposed, but a little bit to the left, about maybe 9 o'clock from it. About 10 seconds after I had taken that picture and looked at it in the viewfinder, and I mean, me and my buddy Jay we were kind of hooting and hollering, like we couldn't believe that we had just saw that with our own eyes and captured it on film within 5 minutes of being there. So I took another photograph, and this time I actually saw the same object, but it was a little bit further off in the distance and had kind of moved away from the trees. You can actually see one of the large stone pillars in that picture, and the orb was changing colors from green to purple, moving in a wiggly fashion. And it just, like I said, seeing it with your own eyes as the flash is illuminating it and then seeing it on your viewfinder was pretty astonishing. So that night we just walked around for about 35 minutes, and our batteries were completely dead. Even the brand new ones that I had in my pocket, I took them out and put them in the camera to replace the ones that had just died. Those were dead as well. Looking back on it in retrospect, like, I'm not surprised. Some things that are there were definitely, I don't know if they were using the energy from the batteries to display themselves or what. There were times where we would see these orbs almost flitter and come into existence for a mere couple of seconds and then just kind of dissipate. Almost like they're coming in and out of reality into our plane of existence. From my point of view, that's what it seemed like to me. I went there the second time, again with Jay, 2 nights later, and we didn't get many orbs at all. But instead, we ended up getting, to me, it looked similar to smoke, but smoke has a grayish, bluish color to it when photographed. I had smoked at the time, but I made a point not to have any cigarettes lit while we were there, just because I didn't want it muddying up any of the photographs. But we started to photograph, for a better lack of a term, looked like a very misty ectoplasm type substance. It was brown when you photographed it. One of the pictures is a picture of my buddy Jay, and he's actually looking at his viewfinder on his camera. And there's a massive cloud, for use of better words, almost looking like it's hovering over him or coming off of him. And within that photograph, and I've showed it to maybe a couple of dozen people in my life, and a lot of people say the same thing, where they say, oh my goodness, I see so many faces in that. And seeing faces in things, I know pareidolia can be tricky, but this seemed to be looking right back at me. It was a little disconcerting, as I would say. And that was when the vibe started to really change at this place. We both started to get a sense that, like, things just weren't as they were the night before. We were kind of jolly the night before, but a couple of days later, like, the vibe was totally different there. There weren't as many animals chirping, which was another thing that I noticed immediately when we went there the second time. So that tipped me off that maybe something wasn't right. I went up underneath the overpass and overlooked the valley. It was really loud. There's cars, heading to New York City. I took a photo of what to me looks like a being wearing some type of robe and what to me looks like a hat, and is either holding what looks like a book, or somebody told me it looks like a scroll, or somebody else said it looks like a harp. It's kind of hard to tell, but it's definitely a figure, and it's definitely facing me. I eventually started taking 2 pictures of things, one right after another. It was amazing how in one photograph, there would be a giant red orb floating around, and then 2 seconds later, there would be nothing. It was the same thing with this photograph that I took underneath that overpass with this creature being looking at me. I took a picture the very next second because I could see the flash illuminate this thing. It startled me because I didn't see anything. It was pretty dark down under there, but when the flash illuminated it, I could see that it was only about 3 or 4 feet from me. The very next picture, there was absolutely nothing at all. And I took a couple of more pictures, but again, nothing. There 1 second, gone the next. Me and Jay again had to leave that night pretty quickly, 30, 35, 40 minutes for battery reasons. It eventually ended up becoming a joke between me and him how much money we were spending on AA batteries. It was getting kind of ridiculous. We would be going through 2 or 3 packs just to try to stay there a little bit longer. But even just bringing them with you, even though they weren't in use, you'd brand new, put them into the camera and they'd be totally drained. In total, me and Jay went there probably about 8 times together. We didn't get activity each time. There were 2 or 3 nights where we just didn't get anything at all. Nothing. The animals were chirping. Everything was hunky-dory under there to them. On nights that we did have a lot of activity, we definitely noticed that there was not as much animal activity. So it was almost like when you walked in there, you just knew whether or not there was going to be stuff to see, stuff to photograph, or if it was going to kind of be a dud. And like I said, a few nights it was duds, but hey, you got to have a nice walk around in the early springtime in a nice valley with some dewy air. So it's actually a really nice place. I went there one night by myself. I only went there once by myself because it didn't end up going very well. In one of the tree lines near the ridge, out of nowhere, a banging sound. It sounded like 2 trees were being banged together, but with no leaves rustling. It was just like, I don't want to say wood knocking because I don't think it was a Sasquatch or anything like that. It was coming out of nowhere. The trees weren't moving, but yet it was sounding like 2 giant logs were being smashed together repeatedly. Bang, bang, bang. And it freaked me out. I'm not going to lie. I hightailed it out of there immediately. The next time I went with Jay a few nights later, he was there and we experienced the same exact thing, just in a different location in the valley. We were about maybe 50 or 60 feet from the tree line on the banks of the river that, like I said, it was dried up that season, that spring. And in the trees, coming from about 25, 30 feet up, no leaves rustling, no branches moving, nothing, but just loud wood clacking. Same repetitive bang, bang, bang. I just looked at Jay and he looked at me and we chuckled nervously and we just both started walking backwards away from the tree line. We didn't really say much. We just said, should probably get out of here. We didn't run, but we walked quickly. The picture I nicknamed this one photo. I nicknamed it the show off. It's a bright white light that's pretty circular in shape. The period of time where I put my finger down to take a photograph, I clicked the button, and as soon as my finger clicked that button, in front of me, a ball of light just came out of nowhere, just came into existence about 25, 30 feet from me, erupted into about the size of a basketball or a small beach ball, illuminating the entire area that we were standing in this valley, while making like a whizzing, electrical, hissing sound, crackling. It had a purple hue to it a little bit on the edges. And by the time the flash took a picture of it, it was starting to dissipate. And within 2 more seconds after the picture was taken, it was completely gone. I looked at my buddy Jay and my jaw was almost on the ground, but I was smiling. We just looked at each other and said, "Oh my God." We just couldn't believe it. And so I nicknamed it the show off because I either got like the most epic picture of swamp gas, even though I don't think there's swamp gas there, or this thing was intelligently exposing itself for my camera and for me. Every time I look at it and think about it, I get a sense of, hey, buddy, like it was showing off. That's really the only way I can explain it. And that's why I nicknamed it that. The amount of light that this thing emanated, like I said, it didn't just light up the valley. It was blinding for about a half of a second when it was really crackling and just doing whatever it was doing. I don't even know what these things are. I've contemplated it. I've thought about it. There's some theories out there, but some of the photographs that I have of some of the orbs, if you zoom in on them and you look closely, that green one, you can sort of see a face peering out, and a sense of voyeurism does emanate from these things. My wife, I've taken her there in the past about, this is going on 10 or 11 years. I took her and a few friends there. I hadn't been there in a long time. She saw some stuff. My friends took some photographs too. The sense of familiarity got to the point where it was permeating. Like these things were there specifically to look at me. The orbs sometimes would follow you around. You would kind of catch the same ones in photographs at different times of the night. There really was just a sense of, well, we're just here to kind of check you out. A sense of like, well, how does this guy know we're here? It's hard to explain, and it's just my gut instinct. And that's just how I personally felt when I was experiencing this. In total, I went to this place about maybe 12 or 13 times. I haven't been there in a while. I would love to go back, especially with some of the new fun toys that are available to capture photographs, and not just in visible light, but in infrared or night vision. I would love to go to this place with some great equipment and see what happens. The aftermath of it, nothing really, just some good stories, and to me, some awesome photographs. Some people have questioned them and whatnot, and the word orb kind of, I don't like using that word, but it is what it is. It's a circular object, but when they're dark red or vibrant green, there's even one photograph in there where if you zoom into that branch over the middle of the path, you can see an orb hanging out behind some of the leaves. It's kind of hard for dust or pollen or bug to pull that off. Seeing is believing, though. That really is the thing, is when you see it with your own eyes and then have the photograph to back up what your eyes saw, and have other people there seeing the same thing and then seeing the same thing on your viewfinder. To me, it was pretty extraordinary, unbelievable, one in a lifetime kind of thing. And to have it be repeatable was the thing that struck me as amazing, is that this wasn't just like a once in a while thing where you might get a spooky vibe and something weird happens and you might hear a slight EVP or something like that. This is like in your face and showing off for the camera and following you around. Sometimes these orbs had like this ectoplasm type mist in the air, and sometimes it would seem like it would start to solidify. From stories that I've heard from other people that have ventured to this place, things apparently can materialize. I never experienced that, except for the loud tree knocking noise that I encountered twice. Other than that, there was no other physical manifestations except for the large balls of light and, like I said, that ectoplasm type cloudy mist stuff. I really don't know what to call it. Ectoplasm, I guess. I don't know. Yeah, that's my experience. I really would like to go have more. My life right now is, I'm a family man now, and so I don't get to venture out much to do anything, but that's okay. That's parental sacrifice. But I would eventually like to get back to that place and do some more research with better equipment, maybe better batteries too, because that was annoying to only be able to go in there for 30 or 40 minutes and have to spend $50 a week on AA batteries. That's my experience, and I hope everyone just enjoys listening to it and enjoys looking at the photographs that I took. They're special to me. It was a special and unique experience that not that many other people can claim to have, and have the photographic evidence to back it up.
If you've had a paranormal experience and would like to be a guest on the show, please contact us by going to myparax.com. That's myparaex.com. Thanks for listening.